Regular meeting of the Metropolitan Council. It's Wednesday, November 9th, 2022. I call the meeting to order. I'm Vice Chair Molly Cummings. I'd like to note that Chair Charlie Zelli will be out of the office through January 3rd on a planned medical leave. So as Met Council Vice Chair, I will be serving as chair in his absence. We wish him well and a speedy recovery. First item is approval of the agenda, and if there are not any changes proposed, we can move forward. Are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to approval of the minutes. These would be the minutes from the October 26th meeting. Is there a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
So move, Chair.
Thank you. Is there thank you. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. At this point, we would invite members of the public who wish to address the council in matters that are not on the agenda to do so. We don't have anybody signed up, and it doesn't appear that we have anyone in the audience that is planning to speak to us. However, in the future, if anyone is interested, we do invite comments of about 3 minutes or so, and you can pre-register at public.info at metc.state.mn.us. Moving on to the consent agenda. First item is approval of the consent agenda. There are 4 items. Is there a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, take a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda is approved. So moving on to the reports of the standing committees. First, we are going to hear from the Community Development Committee, Councilmember Lilligren.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Community Development brings one item not on the consent agenda for approval today. It's item 2022-285. It is a Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund Grant Award for the Vermillion Heights Greenway Regional Trail in Dakota County. And I would note that the implementing agency, Dakota County, requested that this be a same week item so that we can accommodate a closing schedule before the end of the year. And we were happy to do that. So this item will award $178,860 of Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund grant to Dakota County to assist with purchasing a 5.7 acre easement for the regional trail. The acquisition is consistent with the Regional Trail Master Plan, and when completed, the 13-mile Vermillion Highlands Greenway Regional Trail will connect Lebanon Hills Regional Park to Whitetail Woods Regional Park, as well as providing connections to the Vermillion River Greenway, the Rosemont Greenway, and the Vermillion Rivers Scientific and Natural Area and Wildlife Management Area. Dakota County will acquire the easement to construct a segment of the regional trail and preserve the high-quality natural area for the Greenway corridor. Total project cost $250,480. So this grant of $187,860 will use the state dollars from the Parks and Trail Legacy Fund along with council bonds match. The county will contribute the required 25% local match. This is a same week item, as I already said. And so, Madam Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council approve a grant of up to $187,860 to Dakota County to acquire the 5.72 acre easement on the McMenomy property located at 120th Street West in Rosemont for the Vermillion Highlands Greenway Trail.
Thank you.
Regional Trail, thanks.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to the Environment Committee, Councilmember Lindstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This afternoon, the Environment Committee is bringing forward an amendment to a contract with MNTAP, the Minnesota Technical Assistance Program, at the University of Minnesota to extend a contract that we have until the end of 2025 and to increase the contract amount not to exceed $315,500 for a total contract amount not to exceed $1,062,500. MNTAP, it's a great program, Minnesota Technical Assistance Program. It's an outreach and assistance program that helps Minnesota businesses develop and implement industry-tailored solutions that maximize efficient use of resources and reduce costs to improve public health and the environment. With the support and partnership of the Met Council Water Supply Planning Unit, they have been able to address metro area needs for industrial water efficiency. Between 2012, when the project launched, and just last year, MnTap has collaborated with over 60 businesses. They've provided water and energy efficiency recommendations from its student interns and their staff, and helped Minnesota businesses save over 240 million gallons of water and $1.7 million. Therefore, Madam Chair and members of the council, I move that the Met Council authorizes the regional administrator to negotiate and execute Amendment Number 5 to Contract 141007 with the Minnesota Technical Assistance Program at the University of Minnesota to extend the contract until December 31st, 2025, and to increase the contract in an amount not to exceed $315,500 for a total contract amount not to exceed $1,062,500.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? What an exciting partnership.
It is. We've been doing it for a while.
That's great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. Thank you very much. There are no reports from the Management Committee today. Transportation, we're on the consent agenda. Next will be a report from the Joint Committees. Councilmember Lilligren.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The joint committees bring business item 2022-261. It's the approval of the comprehensive plan and comprehensive sewer plan for the city of Mendota. Mendota is connected to the regional wastewater system, and so the item was heard in both the Community Development and the Environment Committees. Staff Council has found that the 2040 plan confirms to regional systems plans, is consistent with council policies, and is compatible with the plans of adjacent and affected jurisdictions. So, Madam Chair, I move that Metropolitan Council adopt the attached advisory comments and review record and take the following actions. Recommended from Community Development Committee is to authorize the City of Mendota to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect and to advise the city to, within 60 days after receiving final DNR approval, the city must adopt the Mississippi River Corridor Critical Area Plan and submit a copy of the final adopted plan and evidence of adoption to the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, to us at the council, and to the National Park Service within 10 days after adoption. Also, the city needs to send the council the dates the local water management plan was approved by the Lower Minnesota River Watershed District and the Lower Mississippi River Water Management Organization, and the date the city adopted the final local water management plan. And finally, from the Community Development Committee, implement the advisory comments in the review record for forecasts. The recommendation from the Environment Committee is approve the City of Mendota's comprehensive sewer plan.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries as well. Thank you. Moving on to other business, we have one item of other business. It is tab appointments. Council members, business item number 2022-306 is regarding the appointment of two candidates to the Transportation Advisory Board, TAB. The TAB advises the council on matters related to transportation planning and programming for the Twin Cities metropolitan area. The council does not currently have an alternate member appointed to the TAB to ensure participation in key decisions in the remainder of the current council term. An alternate has been identified. Councilmember Reva Chambliss is available to serve as council's TAB alternate. Also in District G, which is council districts 11 and 12, they have a vacancy in the alternate chair. The primary District G member is unable to attend meetings in the fall of 2022. Staff worked with Councilmember Barber to evaluate a candidate's submitted application for a short-term alternate appointment to TAB. Therefore, I move that the Metropolitan Council approve the following appointments to the Transportation Advisory Board. Metropolitan Council alternate Reva Chambliss, and District G alternate Richard Holst. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. And thank you, Reva and Mr. Holst, for serving in these important positions. We need to have the representation, and so that's great. So thank you for that. We have one information item this evening, Community Choice Demonstration Program update from Margaret Perez and Renee Pereira Webb. Presenters, thank you. Thank you for being here. Welcome.
Madam Vice Chair, thank you for having us here this evening. My name's Margaret Perez. I'm the Manager of Outreach and Special Initiatives within the Metro HRA, and I'm here with my colleague, Senior Outreach Coordinator, Renee Pereira Webb, who's our project lead on the Community Choice Demonstration Program. This has been in the works for many years, I've been told. I'm actually new to the council as of about 15 months ago. So the conception of this program precedes me, but I've been intimately involved in its development since I started. And we just launched in September. So we're excited to share progress to date with you and give you a little glimpse of what the future holds as well. Next slide. Do I forward the slides? Oh, clicker. That might help. I should say, this is also my first time presenting in person since literally 2019. So when low-income children move to high opportunity areas, they have improved health outcomes, higher graduation rates, higher college attendance rates, and higher earnings compared to those that remained in low opportunity areas. This type of research actually goes back to 1994. The Moving to Opportunity study is kind of what kicked all of this off. That study basically plopped kids living, I shouldn't say plopped, but it took kids living in high poverty areas and moved them to low poverty areas. So they were really just concentrated on poverty rates. Following, and that it demonstrated positive, earning potential, graduation rates, lots of good stuff, but it was really focused on the poverty picture. Dr. Raj Chetty, who you'll see quoted here on the screen and is sort of the kind of one of the foremost thinkers in this area and a researcher at Harvard University, built upon this research with several other studies, and he broadened our understanding about opportunity. He said that opportunity is more than taking kids out of poverty. That's, of course, part of it, but it's not enough. When framing opportunity areas, you have to really think about things like transportation access, exposure to crime, segregation rates, and quality of schools, among other things. So what is our housing authority kind of doing involved in this, and what can a housing authority do to kind of encourage the types of moves that support kids rising out of poverty? Dr. Chetty worked with the Seattle and King County Housing Authority several years back in a study called Creating Moves to Opportunity, so CMTO, and they really studied the types of services that support opportunity moves. And they found that things like these comprehensive mobility-related services, like helping families locate a unit, financial assistance, help with moving costs, and counseling to address housing barriers, really helped families access opportunity at higher opportunity areas. And more recent research continues to confirm the economic and social mobility benefits of opportunity moves for children. So that's kind of the research basis for this program. There we go. So HUD took notice of this. At the same time, we were kind of taking notice of this. So you might recall that Metro HRA has been operating its own in-house version of a community choice program had been operating it for several years when HUD came out with a Federal Register notice looking for applicants to be part of the national demonstration program. Metro HRA was really interested in applying because we had been doing our own in-house program. We anecdotally, and we see it every day in our work, that this type of work is really supported by our participants, it's needed, and it's impactful. But we wanted to be part of the research, really contributing to making the case for why this should be a model that should be adopted across the country. And we knew that we could be a leader in this area as well, because we had a lot of experience already in this area. So we ended up submitting an application in partnership with the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority, and we were awarded funding in 2021. There was funding awarded to 9 sites, 13 housing authorities across the country. There's several joint sites like ours. The other cities are Rochester, New York City, Los Angeles, New Orleans, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Cleveland, and Nashville. So we're one of those 9 sites there. We were awarded $5.2 million. It is a 8-year program, 5 years of study enrollment with up to 3 years of follow-up. We are in the pilot period. We had a 1 year of planning. Now we're in the pilot period. There will be an additional 4 years of enrollment and 2 years of follow-up from where we're at now. And HUD even recognized our leadership in this area so much that they decided to name the national demonstration off of our local program, which is quite the honor. So it's the the community choice demonstration, putting the demonstration word in it distinguishes it from our in-house community choice program, which we ceased to operate in order to be part of this national demonstration project. But it is called the Community Choice Demonstration. And with that, I'm going to pass it along to Renee, who's working on the service delivery side and can kind of tell you more about the program.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you for having us tonight. Our goal is to expand housing access in opportunity areas. Those are defined by HUD in this case throughout our region. We have a joint powers agreement with MPHA, which allows both agencies to operate within each other's jurisdiction, allowing participants and landlords to work with a single PHA. This allows for faster inspections and seamless service delivery for both. Since this is a research study, though, we know that there will be people that have to go into a control group, and so and they won't receive the extra services. Our mobility team is being diligent to carefully explain this possibility to all potential participants and assure them that they will continue to receive all standard services that they would currently receive from Metro HRA. I'm going to go ahead to the next slide, please, Margaret. So, HUD, what are opportunity areas? HUD has defined our opportunity areas using census data, and the areas are based on education quality, current wealth levels, and health of current residents. Some of you attended the intern showcase and reviewed the involvement, spiritual or religion, cultural, transportation, parks and outdoor space, and more. These areas have a history of being difficult to access for current voucher holders. So we're hoping that through this program, we're going to increase the access to these areas for our voucher holders. As you'll see on the slide, there's a link for a metrohra.org lookup. Being a part of this study has given us some new tools. And through this, we have been able to create, with our technical advisors, an address locator. So a participant or landlord can go to this address, put in either their own address or an address that they are interested in, and immediately see if it is in an opportunity area. Next slide, please. So, what are the basic things what are mobility services and how are they going to affect the participants that are in this study? Well, we're going to be, a big part of this is a housing search. We are very excited that this opportunity let us have what's called a leasing coordinator, Brenda Pearson, and she will be actually doing a lot of outreach to landlords and working directly with the landlords to increase participation. And we'll also be entering that information into a database and following up with contacts, which is something that we haven't had prior to the study as well. We will also be working on barriers. Most people know that many people that utilize a Section 8 or HCV voucher have barriers to becoming rental candidates. Some of those barriers are criminal, which we'll be working with them through our mobility coordinators to refer them out to legal services if needed, or we'll be simply working with them on how to talk about the changes that they've made in their life as far as from when the time happened to presenting themselves positively to a landlord now. We also know that there's financial barriers, such as credit scores or low income or other. And we have worked diligently to partner with Lutheran Social Services to be our sole provider for this. So anybody that comes into the program that has these types of barriers and would like to address them can get a referral to work directly with Lutheran Social Services at no cost. We also will be doing education on how to discuss any potential barrier that they may have, whether that they need an application cover letter or just simply working on how to talk about it in a positive way. And then we'll also be working with, as we've said in the past, they'll get financial help. So they'll get help with application fees, security deposits, other types of fees that they need to move in, and some discretionary funds to help them settle into their neighborhoods once they've moved. Next slide, please. One of the other things that's very exciting about this program is we get to have landlord incentives and use them to entice new landlords. And we all have seen the studies that show that those type of programs work. So for our community choice demonstration, we're going to be able to offer a lease-up bonus, which will be 50% of 1 month's rent. So we'll also be able to have an in-house damage mitigation fund with this program. Damage mitigation fund works like an insurance program. So when they go in, we'll sign up, they'll know the full expectations. If there are damages or even unpaid rent that exceed the security deposit, they can submit a request to the program, technically to me, for up to $2,000 to be reimbursed. So this is, we hope, a very large carrot for anybody that may have some of that old stigmatism sitting in the back of their head about our voucher holders, and we're hoping to really eliminate some of that. We also will be able to assist landlords with understanding more about our program and working with them fast. We'll have a mobility coordinator that's going to work with that person all the way through to move, and we'll also be doing post-move check-ins and follow-up once they've been in. So we'll also be able to offer that service to the landlords that will hopefully entice them to work with us. Our main focus is to build relationships for all HCV participants through this program, outreach efforts, and its many successes. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to you, Margaret.
Thank you. So one of the things that surprised us about this program as we got into the planning phases, about the time that I kind of came in around September of 2021, is we were kind of getting heavy into the research study component. And of course, we're not solely responsible for designing the research study. There's very smart people that have contracted with HUD to really design the research study. But the kind of logistics of the local implementation of the study really, I think, took us by surprise in terms of how much work it was actually going to take to get us off the ground. And so I'm just going to provide a little bit more detail about what that looks like, because that's been so much of our lives. If this may or may not be your thing, and that's fine. But so over the life of the program, we're gonna be enrolling across both sites, Minneapolis Public Housing Authority and Metro HRA, a total of 1,911 households. That's the lower right box there, the total of all the totals. Each year, what that looks like is about 350 to 370, 375 people across both sites that are that are existing participants. And then between 20 and 26 people come off our wait list each year using the preference that was approved last year by council, our waitlist preference for this demonstration program. So that looks like 1,800 participants across both sites coming from our existing participants, and 111 coming from our waitlist. And as a reminder, we were awarded 37 vouchers, so 37 of those 111 are new Metro HRA vouchers specifically for the demonstration. Minneapolis also gets an additional 37 for a total of 72 vouchers that were awarded across both sites. And Metro HRA, because we're slightly larger, we're enrolling roughly 60% of all participants. And to be eligible, the only two eligibility criteria is that they need to be existing voucher families, and that means that they're either current program participants at Minneapolis or Metro HRA, or that they've been selected to come off our wait list using the preference, the mobility preference, and then they need to, of course, have children in the household, since we're really focused on families with children. And so they need to have at least one child, 17 or under, in the household, and the parent or guardian needs to be living with them in the household. So those are the two main eligibility criteria. For existing voucher families, they need to live, they don't need to be living in an area of low opportunity, which I think is kind of interesting. But for the waitlist families, the preference requires them to be living in an area, a high poverty area, in order to be selected off the waitlist. And with that, I would welcome your questions. Thank you.
That's a great presentation, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there questions, comments? Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you. I'm glad we are rethinking how we are supporting people as they move out of poverty. I know that back in the 90s, we didn't always do so great with that. People that were living in poverty and living in segregation didn't always get to go to places that had access to jobs or transportation, or even, going to an area of opportunity necessarily. What are we doing, or have we researched the actual opportunity to move into the areas that meet our criteria? Or are they, because of the condition of the housing market, going to use their vouchers for like the same types of locations that they might have today outside of the demonstration?
Madam Vice Chair and Councilmember Chambliss. So I think you're asking about like what is the housing stock availability in the opportunity areas? Is that sort of what the
The
question is
housing
getting at?
stock and the locations.
Yeah, so the locations are very specific. So one of the things that we didn't kind of dive into in our presentation is those areas in blue on the map, or if you go to metrohra.org/lookup, you can look at the address locator. Those, you have to move to one of those areas if you want to access the financial assistance. So you'll only get like your security deposit assistance if you move to one of the areas in blue on the map. And so in that way, it is limited in terms of kind of making sure that certain indicators are met in order for, in terms of quality of schools, concentration of poverty, and crime rates were the three major ones that they were looking at when determining those blue areas. In terms of housing stock, we really recognize, I think that, kind of taking responsibility from a system standpoint, I think that one of the biggest opportunities that this demonstration provides us is just the staff capacity to be able to do that outreach in those opportunity areas. I think that a lot of times, there's, it's very complex in terms of understanding why voucher holders get concentrated in certain neighborhoods, right? But I think one of the things that we can take responsibility for as staff and as a council is looking at where we have put time and investment into building relationships. And I think just by nature of, being, inner ring suburbs, inner city and then kind of inner ring suburbs, it's where our offices are located, it's where more of us live that are staff people, maybe a lot of that means that we're just not developing those relationships, and so this is giving us that opportunity. I would say that just as a quick and easy answer, there's less housing opportunities in these areas in terms of rental housing. But our question is that a factor of the fact that there is housing available and we just haven't tapped into it? Are there people with single-family homes that maybe are not looking to sell their home, but they're looking to downsize? And would they be willing to rent their single-family home to one of the families in our participants, trying to tap into more mom-and-pop operations. Maybe, we're generally aware of where our larger developers have their properties, but where are those smaller units and larger household sizes that can accommodate our families with, multiple children that need 3, 4, 5 bedrooms? And so I think that's, we don't have a perfect list right now. We don't have like a robust list of units we're gonna be able to refer people to, tomorrow, but that's part of the capacity that we're building through this program.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. Just jumping off of that question. So are you working with the local communities in those identified areas, the folks at the city, because they know where the housing stock is? And also, if you are looking at potentially working with single-family homeowners that are willing to rent their properties out, there's rental licensing requirements in some cities and all of that. Maple Grove has a moratorium on that right now, so I don't know how that's coming into play. I think that's a lot to do with stabilizing the housing market with investors coming in, but this is a different scenario. So just thinking, they might, and I'm sure you already have great relationships with them, but they can probably point you in directions and know all the people that would be receptive to this as well.
Thank you, yeah. Vice Chair Cummings and Councilmember Johnson. Sorry, Robert's rules always throw me off. Yeah, actually, so Marianne Powell, who is our intern who did the profiles that several of you guys saw, she's a year-long intern with us, and she is actually doing an exciting program that wasn't a planned part of this presentation, but her second part of her internship is gonna be doing outreach to every single city in our jurisdiction to actually make that direct connect and do an inventory of rental licensing programs and understanding how we can access data within the cities on their rental licensing programs. And that entire project came out of this need to kind of begin or really build our inventory of units for this demonstration. So it's not an explicit part of the demonstration, like the service delivery and then tapping into the relationships of, LCA and LPA and really trying to be collaborative and thinking about how we do this outreach and build those relationships with the end of expanding our inventory of available units and relationships with landlords.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to keep going on that thread and pull the yarn out a little bit more. But I question whether you could find, we've got about 1,200 people in the treatment group by the end. I question whether you could find 1,200 affordable rental units in the blue area that are available for rent during that multi-year period. So the quicker you can get on your list of what's available, the better, because I don't want to set people up for failure saying we're going to give you all this help so you can get this voucher in this great neighborhood and there's nothing available for people to rent. That would just crush people. And I've seen other programs sort of over-promise because there isn't the availability, so making sure that we have enough units for it to even be possible is something that we need to do right away. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sterner.
Thank you. My question has to do with the area, I'm seeing the map of 4 counties, we have 7 in Metropolitan, we have Scott, Dakota, and Washington out here, and the Metro HRA, so is there a different program for that? They refused that, or what's going on with the other 3 counties in that?
Yeah, it's really just a factor of where we have the ability to operate. So at Metro HRA, our jurisdiction is only, suburban, Hennepin, Ramsey, and then Carver and Anoka. And then we have this partnership with Minneapolis Public Housing, and so they're part of the partnership. We would love to, and I think one of our big goals as an agency is to work towards regional portability, regional mobility. But I think that this is like a really great first step towards that. It's just, when we had the chance to apply, we ended up applying with, Minneapolis, and I think there aren't any other sites, and I don't know, maybe there were limitations on how many sites could apply together, like how many housing authorities could apply together, but the eligible areas is more a factor of the way that our housing authorities are organized within the Twin Cities region. The fact that we have so many housing authorities covering the same geographic, or covering the 7-county metro area means that we'd have to submit an application with all of those other housing authorities as well in order for all of us to offer this. I'm not aware of another community choice program in those other counties, but.
Ms. Smith?
Madam Chair, may I? Thank you, Councilmember Sterner. I think one of the things that's important and part of this, and Margaret wouldn't have the history, but we had some collaboration with all 10 housing authorities in the region a few years ago. As Margaret indicated, we've been working with Minneapolis on this initiative since, I think we had the first conversation in 2014. And so prior to HUD even issuing the notice, we had some meetings with all of the housing authorities to see who we could get on board to sort of step into this demonstration, anticipating HUD issuing this notice. And of course, we didn't know what it would look like when it came out, but the only agencies that we could get to bite and want in on this partnership was Minneapolis. So we did do some of that outreach, but what we're convinced of is they're all gonna see how great it is and want in on the next piece, whatever that looks like. So if that's helpful, Councilmember.
Thank you.
Councilmember Vento?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering if this provides an opportunity to work with realtors. As the housing market kind of starts to flatten a little bit, there may be homeowners who have dreams of a new home or a different home or need to relocate for any number of reasons, and the renting might provide an opportunity.
I had not considered that. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I'd encourage you to think about that. I have a very close friend who I think could even possibly be interested in something like this. I don't
Send
know.
her my way.
Yeah.
Councilmember Lindstrom?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just curious how the participants are tracked over time. They know they're part of this research study, and so are they filling out surveys once a year, kind of a thing? It must be really a longitudinal
Yeah.
study for
Yeah.
a
So
decades. And is it Harvard? Am I recalling that right from maybe
Yes.
community development presentations?
Yeah, so, Madam Chair. Please. So the original research, so Raj Chetty comes out of Harvard. He's been part of the advisory committee. I don't even remember what they've called it in terms of informing the study design. HUD contracted with a partner. It's called Apt Associates. They do a lot of large governmental contracts, research studies of this kind. So there's sort of the evaluation component of this. They're who's designing the program. When people are enrolling in the study, and again, this is part of the reason why the recruitment and enrollment piece for the demonstration, the research component has consumed so much more of our staff time than we were originally anticipating. It's actually it's a total of essentially 3 hours of time in order to enroll in the study from start to finish. They need to attend an info session, and then they need to do an individual enrollment meeting in which we complete tons of informed consent, things authorizing both the head of household to release their data to the research partners, as well as to be aware of future data collection. And so they're authorizing 15 years of study follow-up, and that would be those oral interviews, surveys, things like that. Those are always voluntary for the participants, and they're always compensated. And they will not be performed by HRA staff. They'll always be performed by the evaluation team. In addition, they're authorizing up to 30 years of additional, or of data collection from, what do they call it? I want to say public sources of data, but essentially your, Bureau of Labor Statistics, IRS, looking at your income, things like that. So they're using that, Social Security numbers from the kids and things. So that's a very complex process, and honestly, it's a lot to ask of our participants to release that type of data. So it's something that they haven't taken lightly, and that we don't take lightly as staff. So we really walk people through exactly what they're authorizing when they do consent into the study. But that's how the data collection is happening.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gonzalez, and then
Councilmember Lee had his.
Okay, Councilmember Lee.
Thanks, Madam Chair. My question is on slide 10. You said the demonstration is open to both existing families, and then number 2 is families on the wait list who are invited to apply. What's the profile of the families that would be on the wait list that would be invited to apply, and how are they chosen from a lottery, or how's that work?
Yeah, so they're currently, so we have a wait list of about 2,000 people right now. And so we look at the data on our wait list. They have to have children in the household. And then they must also be living, we look at the address that they submitted at the time they applied and see whether it matches a poverty census tract that's been identified through the study. And they'll be sent, they'll be invited in order, one at a time, because there's so few. We literally just invite one family, and then we say, you can come off the wait list if you're interested in enrolling in this program. Otherwise, you stay on the wait list in the same order, no punishment, no nothing. You just don't come off the wait list quite yet. If they decide to come off the wait list, they have to enroll in the study. Once they do that, then they're just a participant. But that's how they come off the wait list, is that we did come to council about a year ago and asked for an additional preference as part of our wait list admission policy. And so they get selected in order that they're listed on our wait list according to that criteria.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Thank you. Just have a comment and then a quick question. And my comment is that it's actually kind of sad to realize that there are parts of the region that are not opportunity areas, that we don't have the best opportunity to thrive for our children and families on health and wealth and education. So I think that has to be part of what we do here at the county and any other stakeholders to make sure that every area is an opportunity area in the region. And my question is about the families once they move into those areas. Are we tracking their impact and benefit into those areas? I don't like to see people, because of their economic status, to be addressed or considered to be a problem to be solved. I think they are an asset that is not being utilized, and that's what we're trying to do, is make sure that folks that can contribute a lot to the society have the opportunity to do so. And, can we track, for example, bringing children to a school district, which in turn increases the funding to the district, or lowering the unemployment rate because we have more workers available into this new zone, but they're relocating. Any and all, downstream effects of moving folks into those opportunity areas that they're bringing to the area, as opposed to just being a problem that we are solving.
Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez. Yeah, I appreciate those comments, and it's definitely, we've had a lot of internal discussion. I know internally we don't really like to use the language of opportunity, high opportunity and low opportunity. It just doesn't sit well with me. I think that no matter where you live, there's opportunity that exists. So these are kind of terms that have developed over time through the research and that HUD has adopted. And we use it for, simplicity's sake, I think sometimes. I think that there are a lot of potential ripple effects that happen. This study is very narrowly focused on those families, the specific outcomes of the kids. And we haven't really thought more into kind of like those community benefit or ripple effects. I'm not aware of the research out there, although I'm sure that there's also been studies out there. And in fact, kind of back on this article, I thought, I read the full thing. I encourage you to read it. Oh, there we go. So key to reducing this is a New York Times article that came out about with Raj Chetty research, but it's talking about relationships across race and class lines. And I think one of the things in that article that kind of struck my interest and speaks to something that I'm aware of in my own life is that it's not just about taking poor people out of poor areas and putting them and kind of better by proxy, but it's this idea that we all benefit when there's more mixing across race and class lines. I mean, I guess I'm maybe getting into my own personal beliefs here, but I think that that's something I can't point to the exact research that shows that, but I think that is kind of one of the ripple effects of this type of program or research, or at least one of the intents. So an interesting thing that we can look into tracking.
Thank you.
Okay, lots of hands up. Councilmember Sterner, you've had your hand up as well.
Okay, oh, thank you. Yeah, just one kind of follow-up when you brought that up, because the program's more like health, wealth, and education, which I think those are amazing. Like, I came from a family where my dad was a listed guy, we had 10,000 to raise a family of 6 in a year, but when we had a great education system, we all became successful by having that motto and work with the community. But I know like some of the new part is more about like the race, like, we want to have educators that look like the students and going in, I'm wondering if we're just working on the health, wealth and education, is the diversity like being around communities that reflect the diversity of that individual, is that important or is it better to spread out? But I'm kind of concerned like we have put someone in like a rural Carver County, comes from this area, we're gonna go out Carver, it's like you got the rural versus urban is a huge thing, or even suburban versus urban, it's just different feel and all that, and I'm wondering with difference, is that gonna be healthy that way, or do we have to look at some of like, staying with people, the same diversity, or the same kind of thought, like one urban area to another, or rural, like, I'm just kind of wondering how that goes, but these three, I get it, but what about the other factors that may?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was gonna have Renee respond to this, because she was one of the program staff that worked with our original community choice program. She actually worked with families that were sort of adapting to the new communities, so I'll let you take this one, yeah.
And thank you, Councilmember Sterner. I actually worked with a family that moved from Brooklyn Center and moved out to rural Chaska in our original community choice program. And at first, yes, she will say that it was culture shock. But as they, and through the support, and that's one of the things the study's really working on here. We're really trying to show that if you put the services in place and you put the support in place, that is the key to the success here. You can't just take someone and move them and think it's gonna work. We have to have these services and support. So through working with this person, and we'd have our monthly check-in, she'd call, we'd talk, what's going on, how are the kids doing in school. She was able to start building her community. We got her kids involved in the sports there, which is something we can do now with the discretionary funds. We can help them get involved in some community activities or tutoring, anything the children may need. She was able to start building that community involvement. And even though not everyone looked like her, she said, I began to feel like this was home. And that was the important. And this person has come, still a tenant, still living out in Chaska, still loving it. But the thing she would tell me is, she says, Renee, we left the bicycle out last night, and it was still there this morning. She was scared that the bicycle that she had worked so hard to get for her son would be gone the next morning. It was still there. She goes, I never imagined living somewhere I could leave the bicycle out. So she began to feel like that was home. And so she has actually come back and served on some of our resident advisory boards for us and really helped us to understand that transition into a different area. So it is difficult, but through the support and helping understand of building those communities, people are thriving and enjoying it. And that's not the case for everybody. We've argued that, just moving maybe a block or two over to zip code is an opportunity for some to stay in their schools and that. But that's why we really look at the ages of the children and how this works. But we're really working to show that support and those services make the difference in that case. But thank you for bringing that up.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Chambliss, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm glad that Councilmember Sterner brought that up. I don't want to date myself, but I've seen the history of what happens in the movement from, segregation, desegregation, opportunities can, lead to culture shock sometimes. And even in my personal life, moving from the inner city to a more rural area where there were horses next door, and I was the only Black kid for several cities, or the only Black family for several cities. So I know what that culture shock and that isolation is. And it wasn't necessarily moving from poverty to, whatever, but to have 3 criteria, that's really good, especially for a demonstration project, because it gives you a baseline. But keeping in mind that the demonstration is an opportunity for us to track what people's choices are, what their experiences are, so that when it becomes more than a demonstration project, we can understand more about that. So this is an opportunity to understand that. And there were some things that were lost in the movement from segregation to desegregation in terms of, like this article, you had doctors and nurses and poor people that were, you know, all the same race living together in the same community. And through both choice and not choice due to like, you know, freeways coming in, some of those things were changed and lost. And so the key here is the choice and the ability to have the opportunities and to build in those opportunities, because if we don't have, like Councilmember Wolf said, and I was alluding to, if we don't have places that are suitable for them, they may just end up in the same situation, just a different location potentially, or still not be able to use their vouchers. So I think this is a good opportunity to take notes and ask those deep, hard questions.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah.
Councilmember Wolf. Oh, I'm sorry.
Please, no, go ahead.
Thank you, and that leads right into what I was gonna ask is, what happens if somebody comes off the waiting list to be part of this and they can't find a unit?
So they're not required to move to an opportunity area. So they're required to enroll in the demonstration. And in order, so they come off our wait list. In order to come off our wait list, they must first enroll in the demonstration. So once they enroll, let's say they get selected into the services group, right? Because they're still randomized. They might get into the control group, in which case they're just one of our participants, right? They're just into the mix. If they get selected to receive services, they start meeting with the coach, talking about where they'd like to live, getting to explore some of the opportunity neighborhoods. They start getting referred to units. We start looking for units. Oh man, they need a 6-bedroom voucher. They only want to live in Maple Grove. We cannot find anything. We're never at any point saying you have to live in an opportunity area. We're just saying you get additional supports if you get that money, essentially, if you choose to move to one of the opportunity areas. If they don't find a place in an opportunity area, or they decide that they want to lease up in a non-opportunity area, even if they could find a unit somewhere in an opportunity area, that's totally fine, and we honor that choice. And kind of going back to Councilmember Chambliss's comments, I really that's why I like our framing of choice, our internal framing of choice, and why we like the name of our program better, Community Choice, because to us this is a lot more about choice than about deciding or defining what opportunity is for families, because it's so subjective. And so I really hone that in, like in the enrollment meetings with people, is there's this component of you need to see this as being an opportunity move for you. And it's not, we have a leasing coordinator and we have a mobility coach, and they're gonna be working their butts off to help you find a place, but you have to be motivated to wanna move too. You have to see this as being a positive. And if you don't, that's totally okay, but this just might not be the program for you, right? So how people define choice and opportunity is still very much an alive conversation within our agency, and this is just like one of the ways that we're trying to kind of create more choice and opportunity. But yeah, it's hard because honestly, our voucher placement rates are low right now because the housing stock or the availability of housing is low. So we're having a hard time placing vouchers just in the areas where our vouchers are already concentrated, let alone trying to expand new areas. So I mean, there's always that risk. Yeah.
And, excuse me, go ahead, Council Chair. If I want to add on that, one of the things that we didn't tell you, we're starting 6 months in advance of somebody needing to move. And I think that's important to know. We're not waiting till that notice period or anything. We're getting in there 6 months before their recertification, the re-signing of their lease for current. And we're going to have that same link for those that get a voucher. So we are going to do everything that we can within the time limits and making sure that we have those honest conversations as well during that time.
Councilmember Lilligren.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And Margaret, Renee, it's great to see you here. Welcome. I hope we see a lot more of you. It's great to see more of the Metro HRA staff too. And we know that it's an incredible team that works with Terry and everyone. And so I'm really excited about this. And I think that the introduction of a few things, the mobility-related services, I think will really contribute, at least possibly contribute to greater success within a family, wherever they choose to live. I love your emphasis on word choice, and I think it's really interesting that HUD picked up the program that we've been working on in community choice and is branding this effort. And one of the I have a couple of questions, and kind of wrapped into comments as well, but I'm really interested in the landlord incentives. And, we talked about the availability of housing stock and how challenging it can be. And if we can bring something to the table with landlords, I think it could have an interesting impact on the availability of housing. And I look at the, what do we call them, the opportunity areas, and just from memory, it seems like a lot of communities in the opportunity area map are not communities where there's a high level of participation in the vouchers anyway. And so I think that will be really interesting to see if effort put on the landlord, sort of the supply side of the equation, has an impact. And I guess that leads me to my question, which is, through the Metro HRA, you are already doing some of this work around housing choice. And this is a HUD-sponsored demonstration, and it's very longitudinal. I'm amazed that there's availability of 30 years of data collection on some of the participants, and just knowing how the pace that the federal government can move, and even the pace that a regional government can move, but we can be much more agile, I hope, as we go forward. And so I'm just wondering what kind of internal conversations there's been about implementing some of what we might learn through this pilot just within the Metro HRA. I mean, I'm sure we'll be informing federal efforts through HUD, but it seems like we are primed to not have to wait 3 years or 30 years or whatever to really start acting on what we learned from this demonstration. So I'm just wondering if within the HRA team, we've had those kinds of conversations, how we might start using what we learn more as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so I will just respond my little piece, and then I'm gonna turn to Terry to talk more kind of strategy outlook for us adopting what we're learning quicker than 30 years from now, please. So one of the limitations of being part of this is that we couldn't create or be operating a parallel program. The people participating in a parallel program wouldn't be eligible to also be participating in the demonstration, would probably be a better way to put it. And so what that means, the way that this has kind of been drilled into my head by the research team, is that if we offer it, as long as we offer it to everyone, all of our participants, then it's considered a standard service. So we couldn't create a subgroup. My understanding as of now is that we couldn't create a subgroup kind of program targeting families with kids moving to opportunity areas and just offer it to that select group of people and have them still be eligible also for the demonstration. HUD would not be very happy with us if we did that. However, if we invested in the idea of if we start seeing that, and I'm just making something up, right? But if we start seeing that security deposits, we are finding like that is the key to success. And we decide as a council, as an HRA, that we're gonna invest in paying security deposits for our participants, as long as we're offering that equally to all of our participants, maybe not to everyone, but that there's an equal opportunity for that, that would be like an allowable thing that we could do. And so that's just speaking to the study component. I'll let Terry speak to maybe kind of more long-term, if you'd like to. I mean.
Absolutely. Madam Chair, Councilmember Lilligren, it's a big question. I think we've been testing some of this strategy and scenarios since we launched our initial community choice program back in 2015. And the reason we wanted to be part of this demonstration is because we know this works. We are one of the few agencies across the entire country that is doing these post-move support pieces. So trying to help families overcome barriers once they move to new neighborhoods. And we learned about that from the council-owned housing units, a family affordable housing program. When we got those units in the early 2000s, we're moving people from that, lived in the city of Minneapolis for many, many years, moved them out to Eden Prairie and said, good luck to you. And it didn't work. And so we've learned over the years that we need to really be there to support people, to help them overcome barriers, to help them acclimate to new neighborhoods and help them do goal setting. Like what do I want for my family? And so doing some of that intentional goal setting that Renee and the outreach team did with our community choice program, it works. What are your goals? Where do you want to be? What do you want for your children? Where do you want to live? And so we know it works. What we'd like to do, and yes, there's some challenges with the study, particularly we went back and forth with HUD so many times about these maps and labeling opportunity areas because we didn't like it. But what were we gonna do, step away and say, okay, we're out? No, because what we wanna show HUD is these supports work, and, you know, the federal government, you need to step and start supporting financially these supports so families living in poverty can have success and long-term success and housing stability. So our long-term goal of this program is to help show HUD that these things can work for families in achieving upward mobility, and then the federal government will fund it. So that's our elevator speech. I think the other important thing is we think at Metro HRA, we think about upward mobility, and we want to have several strategies underneath this upward mobility umbrella. One is community choice. For families that want to move to new neighborhoods, we want to help them make that happen. For families that want to remain in place, we want to have other supports. And our Homework Starts with Home program partnership is one of those programs in suburban Ramsey County. So some of the families want to remain living in their current home, but they need, you know, we can still support them there to help them achieve success in existing neighborhoods. So our long-term strategy, I would say, is to develop many strategies under this goal to help families achieve success regardless of where they want to live. The one other thing I'll add, and then I'll be quiet, Madam Chair, is we're in the process of doing a residential preferences study with our partners in research and also with Minneapolis and St. Paul PHAs. And the purpose of that research is to work with voucher holders living in the 3 jurisdictions about why they live where they live. So our voucher holders living where they live, and if there are gaps in where they want to live and where they do live, what are those gaps and why, and what can we do about it? And so what are the trade-offs? Like what, you know, family A, B, C, what makes you choose this unit? Is it the only unit available to you? Is it because you need public transportation? Is it because you want a safe unit? Is it because of quality schools? And what are those trade-offs that, and where you're choosing to live? And I think that will be some groundbreaking research that will be, get national attention, because to my knowledge, it hasn't been done anywhere, but it's, how do we get people to living where they want to live, and how can we support that? The other thing is all these things cost money, so we're grateful to you all for helping contribute to the community choice and our mobility folks, because we couldn't do it without financial assistance, because these things are expensive.
Great. Thanks, Harry, and I just applaud that work. I look forward to that research going forward. I do think it's groundbreaking. I've never heard of anything like it either, and it can really inform the whole housing system here in the region. So well done. Thank you.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Madam Chair, you know, I'm new to this again. I might find myself saying it often, but something about it just doesn't look right to me. I don't know. I'm just not getting it. First of all, I don't know what is a treatment? So you got a treatment group. Who's in treatment?
So treatment, so that's kind of just classic experiment terminology. So the treatment that they're receiving is receiving services. So like when you think about medical research studies, like, you know, they're getting the pill, whereas the control group is getting the placebo. This is the treatment in this case, when you talk about kind of social research, is the intervention that you're providing. So in this case, it would be the security deposit, coaching.
But it's referred to as a treatment group. That strikes as an individual or a number of individuals. So I guess, how do you determine someone needs treatment? I mean,
so this
I guess when I first looked at it, I don't get it, so.
Totally fine, I know, and I feel like, sometimes I feel like I'm being overly repetitive, because I've explained, I've come to CDC meetings and whatnot, and so I probably breezed over this too quickly as well. So this table here shows you can see the top line, on the far left is the titles of the rows, and so treatment group is those receiving either the comprehensive mobility related services or selective mobility related services. So those are anybody receiving services through this program, which includes the financial supports, coaching, et cetera. They're randomly selected. So they go through this enrollment. So they consent to be part of the study. So they basically are saying, I agree to be part of this study, and I understand that I may or may not get the services as being part of the study. At the end of that meeting, we literally press a button on a computer, and there's a computer program that generates randomly and assigns them to either be in the treatment group, so receive services, or to be in the control group, so not receive services, or just receive our standard services.
Placebo? I mean, I'm
The
just,
placebo.
again, I don't know if there's a better name we have this, but,
Yeah.
all right. I guess the other thing too is that, I mean, do we really need a study to say that if you move to a good neighborhood and a better school, you're gonna meet good people and do things?
I wish that we didn't, because man, that seems really obvious to us, doesn't it? But HUD, this is really something that, I mean, I come from a city setting, now I'm in regional government, and I've definitely in my short career have seen that this is really what it takes to make kind of widespread policy change, and especially when you're looking at a federal housing program like the Housing Choice Voucher Program, they really need that research to back it up and sort of fortify the program from any specific political agenda that may come down the line. I don't know, that's my take on it, but I think that's, the research really just helps to fortify and justify the need for further funding, is how I would explain it.
Just a
Madam
couple more
Chair,
quick
may I
things.
add to that?
Yes, please. Carrie.
Councilmember, Madam Chair, I think the other piece of this is the whole goal of the study is to provide full supports to one group, partial supports to another group, and no supports to the control group. And then the whole goal is to determine which supports are the most beneficial to families in helping them achieve success. And so we hope that the outcome of the study is it the financial incentives to the landlord? Is it the payment of the security deposit? Is it the pre-move counseling supports? Is it the post-move, connections? Which are the things that help families the most achieve success? And so that's the question to be answered.
And do we look at the history of the cities or counties or wherever we're moving folks to? I mean, do they have a history of discrimination? Do they have a history of people moving out? And we seem to be focusing on the quote-unquote treatments.
Madam Chair, council member, no, we have not. We do know there's another council initiative with our housing policy staff and looking at cities that have discriminatory policies that are, I forget what they call it.
Racial covenants?
Yes, yes, racial covenants, and reaching out to cities that have those racial covenants and trying to get them to remove those racial covenants, but that's sort of a separate piece. It's not a piece of the demonstration, but you make a good point.
I just look at it and I see a lot of this is happening today in and of itself, and that is if you look at athletes, young athletes, they can choose whatever high school or school they go to, and a lot of people are choosing to do that. That's another reason to take a look at where I can get off better and I can have these opportunities. The second is that, our family and others were divided up based on number of bedrooms. I have 3 brothers, 3 sisters. I lived in a duplex. We lived on one floor. My grandma and them lived upstairs and about 4 houses around us. And it was really around jobs and number of bedrooms. And then I guess the last thing I think, and I apologize if I'm behind here. And so I'm going to have to take a look at this because it's puzzling to me. But again, what people may choose to be a part of this treatment because they can get help right away. So they're further down the list. And so do they need the treatment? I don't know. I'll go if I can get in first in line. And I don't know that I need it or not, but I can get the voucher. So I don't know. There's just some questions here too, and I appreciate the work, and it raises something, and maybe I'll get to where Councilmember Lilligren is. But until then, I just have these kind of questions going on. I just, often I think we study things to study things, and there's some common sense to some things, and I'm just not finding it at this point. Sorry.
Madam Chair, and Councilmember, we offer the opportunity to meet one-on-one.
Yeah,
If
that'd
that
be great.
interests you to just kind of bring you up to speed or answer any questions you have, I offer that up to anybody that's interested.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Can I add one more thing for the council member? One of the things that you started off with was who needs treatment? And a very valid question. I think a piece that we missed too. We send out an information letter to everybody that's eligible to be in the study for that particular month. 6 months out, they meet the criteria. We send out a letter telling them what we're doing. We've got this new program. If you are interested, or if this sounds interesting to you, contact us. We put it to them to say that they want this information. And then they come and they sign up for an information session and find out more information about it. And at that time, they decide if this is something that they want to get more information and go to an enrollment meeting with our enrollment team or not. So all of it's put on to the family. So again, they can make those choices for their family to make sure it's right for them. And I just wanted to make sure you knew that. Thank you.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate that point of view, because I wrestle with this a little bit too, just my own background as a person in life. But, you know, I really hope that, you know, this can still focus around education and finding a good job, having transportation. Outside of transit sometimes, I needed a car, you know, so, and I think as we were talking earlier, maybe it was at CDC, but, you know, what is the cost that you know, the amount of money that somebody needs just to live? So we're doing things that can move the needle, but it's very prescribed in the things that we are offering, where there are so many things that might be the thing that somebody helps to, you know, elevate and move them up. I'll call out Interfaith Outreach and Community Partners out in the western suburbs. They've been doing this very same work for decades. They have the support systems in place. They offer temporary money in case you've missed your rent. They offer deposits for new apartments that they are helping coordinate with the HRAs, getting, you know, vouchers for units. They are working, have a separate building company. They partner with the schools, especially new families that are moving within the district. They're making sure that there's a community homework helpers right in the apartments, all of that. They've been doing this for 20-some years, and there is success in that. They, I'm sure, are working, getting grants, but it's so comprehensive to make sure that we're not you know, I remember the years of busing, and I remember, you know, the Holman decree, you know, where, okay, we're gonna move people around and things are gonna get better, but if you don't have the supports that go with you, it can be an utter failure. So, you know, I really want to, you know, applaud this work and, of course, support the work. But I too think that there's, you know, and I get it. You've got to have the research to back it up. Always, 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 especially with the federal government. Get it. I just hope, though, that we don't also miss out. And I know you guys are working on the CDC, HRA, in helping people get that first opportunity to buy a home, so that you can start to go and build equity. Those are the things that really move people up, right? So these are first steps, or not first steps, they're steps along the way, but this is a moment in time in somebody's life, but there's the before, middle, and the after, so it'll be interesting to see where it goes. But I'd also say too, you know, and I think it is about the opportunity areas, you know, words mean things, but I know what we're doing here. But to the point that was made earlier, it's sad, you know, every area should be an area of opportunity. People have to, you know, there are families and cultures and people you go to church with and school with, and it's not a high income area, but those are your folks. Those are the people that have your backs. And you're gonna move out of that. You know, we have to really start focusing on an economy that works for everybody. Sorry, I'm not trying to be on a soapbox, but that's what it's about. So I'm really glad to see this hard work. It'll help us to understand which levers help within what we control. But there's so much more to it. And I have said this before, we're losing ground. You know, people's wages aren't keeping up with the housing market. We're losing housing inventory because we've got investors that are coming in and turning them into rentals and Airbnbs and all that. And I get it's a free capitalistic economy society. I'm not trying to bag on that, but there's a lot of big things that are pushing people's lives right now. And I hope and I believe this will help to a degree, but I guess I just reflect back on all the comments that have been said, and including Councilmember Chambliss and Pacheco. There's a nervousness for some reason in me as well as we move forward on this. So,
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, Councilmember Vento?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize for speaking twice, but I couldn't help but note that if you aren't familiar with the book, The Other Wes Moore, the new governor of Maryland is the author of the book. His name is Wes Moore. It's a powerful book. I read it years ago. I'm going to read it again in celebration of his win last night. But it talks about the fates of two young men by the name of Wes Moore growing up in Baltimore in very different conditions. Amazing book. So I'd encourage you to read it because it gets to what both of you, Renee and Margaret, are talking about today. The other thing that I would suggest, and I haven't, obviously, should have done this in preparation for the meeting today, but I Googled Dr. Raj Shetty and the New York Times, and there are a number of articles about him in there, and I intend to do more reading up, because I share some of the questions, Councilmember Pacheco, that you're talking about. We don't want this to become a stigmatized program or to be misused in any way, but I'm really curious as to what he's learned long-term as well as short-term about the impacts, and I just find it very fascinating as a former educator. A lot of it is kind of a duh, but it's important, and thank you.
Other comments, questions? Lee?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think Councilmember John Pacheco brings up a good point. And when we think about, we're governments and we need studies and officials, official studies, and maybe some of these things will kind of undo some of the injustices of the past, or find out where some of them still lie. For example, it wasn't so long ago that Hubert H. Humphrey made a name for himself studying why blacks and Jews were chased out of Cedar Riverside, and that's how he became well known. And some of those conditions may not be there anymore, and some of those legacies are still there. But and back to John Pacheco's point, we need these studies to help undo those past wrongs. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Well, you clearly have hit on something that's of tremendous interest here, really interesting comments, and probably thought-provoking for you as well. I was jotting just some words as people were talking. The power of words and the power of words that we use, really, really important. I myself saw that treatment groups thing. I don't care for that, but that's just me. But anyway, I understand what you're saying as far as your justification or how that was selected. But the power of words is something we've talked about very much in this council and so forth. And I think we need to be really careful on how we use language moving forward. Could you send us the link to the New York Times article that you're referencing here? Absolutely. That would be terrific. Thank you for that. I think the comprehensiveness of what's this demonstration program takes into account is great. I think the support and the services, as has been mentioned many, many times in different ways here, is critical and will be really an important part of this program. I think the landlord incentives hopefully will incent others to become landlords and will perhaps help with the supply side of the equation, which is always a big challenge. I really like that the focus is on the individuals, not on, okay, here's our program, find a way to meet the criteria if you want to be in it, but it's more, what do you see as opportunity? How do you define success? How can we help you? I think that's, that's super important. What are your goals? I think that's going to be really, really important to see for the success of the program. I think it certainly speaks to the strength of our HRA, and I'm sure this was very competitive. It clearly has taken a tremendous amount of work to get to this point, and I think It really underscores the creativity and of the entire HRA staff, and thank you all for that. It will be really interesting to get updates and as this moves forward and see if there are things that get tweaked or, you know, successes that we can all celebrate or lessons learned or whatever. But a great overview, thank you. And thank you to the staff for developing this. This is just pretty amazing. And thank you for the really interesting and robust conversation. I think that's just been great. So thank you for that.
Appreciate the conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, so that is our only information report tonight. So then do council members have anything that they would like to share this evening? Councilmember Bento?
I have a request. I'm wondering if possibly between now and the end of the year, it might be possible at a committee of the whole to get an update on the homeless situation. As we wade into another winter and we read more about encampments and what's happening with encampments, and I'd just be curious as to kind of some of the statistics and what's going on with that.
Thank you for that. Any other questions, comments, anything from anybody on the council? No? Okay. Then how about Regional Administrator Mary Bogey?
Well, in recognition of some of us who spent a very late night.
Okay. Ms. Blackhart, you're from OGC.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will pass as well.
Okay. If there is no other business, then the meeting is adjourned.